This is Barnstable Today for Thursday, January 8th. Welcome aboard. I'm Mark Mumford. And just a quick reminder, the meetings we cover can be found on demand at the town's website, town.barnstable.ma.us.
The Town Council is about to engage in its first meeting of the new year. That's our top story. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kevin Friel.
Town Council President Fred Chirigotis outlined the agenda at a town hall press conference.
Hopefully this is going to be the type of agenda we'll see in the future. Short and sweet. 2009-057 is an authorization to extend a contract beyond 3 years. And the Town Council will vote. We have Mr. Anthony present if we have any questions, but basically what happens is state law requires that the town approve a contract which would be in excess of 3 years. So this is an authorization to extend that contract out to 5. 2009-058 is an appropriation and transfer for parking enforcement, which would include $34,000 for 2 smart cars. I'm told that those vehicles need to be street legal. Those vehicles will be used for more than just parking and perhaps for beach supervision. Then 2009-059 is a snow and ice overdraft. Every year, unfortunately, it snows, and we have to appropriate a sum of money for the removal of snow. And that's what this is. Any questions? Oh, excuse me. We will be having a report from the Coastal Resources Committee. I believe that was supposed to be done, within 6 months of starting. It's a little bit late, but they're ready and there'll be a presentation. Anything else?
The snow and ice order, Fred, is this something that's done every year, no matter how much, or is this a reflection of how much snow we've received so far?
This is a vote that's taken every year, and I believe in here it gives us what we've expended on, I think on page 8, it shows what the expenditures have been on snow and ice. So depending upon how bad the weather is how much money we're going to have to spend.
And that was prior to the last storm, because that was submitted December 22nd, and the last storm was December 31st. So just for clarity.
There you go. So that'll be increased, I'm sure.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts allows us to, in this specific instance, to deficit finance. This is an overdraft order, which means we can never know how much we're going to spend on snow and ice. And when the storm is predicted, we don't have enough time to call a special meeting of the town council and do an appropriation order. So in this specific instance, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts allows communities to adopt this and basically deficit finance.
The Conservation Commission had an intriguing session this week, taking up items as diverse as hydrilla and the West Barnstable shooting range.
In regard to hydrilla, the question was whether or not to approve an additional 2 years of the herbicide use in Long Pond in Centerville.
The herbicide Sonar has been used to battle hydrilla in Long Pond for the past 7 years.
One more question. You said I think you said at some point we're going to be satisfied with non-herbicide management techniques.
Yes.
So we're going to be treating this thing for a long while. We're going to be monitoring it and managing it and pulling it and.
I think, yeah, in terms of some level of management is going to. I'm not sure eradication is really an attainable goal. I think realistically, using the herbicides to get it to a level where you can use these other small-scale techniques, benthic barriers, hand pulling. Hand pulling is one that's raised some concern because those tubers are 6 to 8 inches into the sediment. Excavating that tuber becomes difficult, particularly when you're digging in the muck and you're underwater and the water gets stirred up and you can't find the flames at that point. And it doesn't take long for this plant to explode.
It's almost like a Hobson's choice in the sense of, okay, if we keep it closed and treated, it's going to get better, but this treatment could go on for years and years and years. But the downside of that is who knows what the herbicide does, but we're also closing off its use to the public. You know, on the other side of that, if we open it up to the public, which is certainly desirable, considering it's their money paying for this thing, we then take the risk of spreading hydrilla and closing every other body of water that it gets into.
Right.
How do we get around that, Hobson's choice? Give us some help here.
Well, I think with regard to the use of the herbicides, I think you kind of are operating under the premise that repetitive use of the herbicide has some sort of long-term impact to the ecosystem. Certainly, all of the research that I've looked at, and certainly my personal experience in using it, I certainly haven't seen that. We have been able to maintain a really healthy native plant assemblage in the lake throughout the course of the management program. Water quality has remained fine, really at baseline levels since prior to the start of the program. So there's no documented long-term impacts to fish, wildlife, human health.
But I guess I was getting at this issue of risk of spreading it versus the negative of continuing to keep this, use taxpayer dollars to fund this project, right, and while closing the use of the facility to taxpayers. It's got to bother us.
2 more years of herbicide use in Long Pond was approved. However, with the change that boats will now be allowed to be launched in the pond sometime after August 1st each year, when the threat of spreading the hydrilla decreases dramatically.
Meanwhile, the hot item with the shooting range was discussion whether to close the range each day prior to sunset or to adopt set closing times that would shift with the seasons.
Yeah,
But let me go on.
let's go to John's proposal.
What I'm suggesting, based on the testimony, the evidence that we had, the loss of hours, if you went to frogs, was over 200 hours or something for shooters. Plus the fact, having been on the commission for 9 years now, I am not aware of one issue that we have ever faced with these closing times. The police officer who talked to Sergeant whatever wasn't concerned with the half hour before sunset. What he wanted to do was to clarify, when the last shot was taken and when you had to be off the property. In my 9 years, we've had 3 enforcement issues, and none of them have been a problem with enforcement hours. So I'm not sure where this is really coming from, Mr. Chairman. I know that there's a handful of people that were concerned about noise, and I think we substantially addressed that issue by limiting institutional use, which is where the majority of the noise was coming from. And as Peter Sambu said at the last meeting, or Scott, we didn't even know the impact of that yet. So while I know that Councilor Farnham and some others in the group that he's representing there, the handful of group that came, would like this to be changed, I see no strong reason to do that. I do see a strong reason to clarify what we mean, and that's the attempt that I've made. Rob also produced at that last meeting a specific sunset schedule for every day of the calendar year. And so my proposal is that we post that schedule and that we clarify that it would be shut down a half hour before sunset with the last shot taken on the designated closing time, and you must be off the property by 15 minutes, within 15 minutes of that time. If you wanted to tighten up a little bit, you could say that the last shot must be taken 15 minutes before closing time and you must be off the property by closing time. You can tighten that up just a little bit.
The closing times at the range off the service road in West Barnstable will stay the same.
Meanwhile, on the meeting front, as we mentioned, it's the town council in the hearing room this evening at 7. No meetings on the schedule for Friday.
And keep in mind, you can check out just about all the many meetings here in town by going to the town website, town.barnstable.ma.us.
Thanks for joining us today. I'm Kevin Friel.
We'll meet you right back here tomorrow. I'm Mark Mumford.